Well, good afternoon, guys. We get into the next module. You can see there organization culture. Yeah, we all know every organization has a culture, and it all depends on its strength. It can have a significant influence on the attitudes and behaviors of the employees based on the organization culture. And most of the employees, they form a perception about the organization based on the culture that exists in the company. So when I say culture, it could be emphasis on the team's performance, the support for the people, the risk tolerance in the company, and so many things. And as a manager, we will have to create a culture in such a way that we have a better working environment. All the managers can especially do their part in creating an ethical as well as a spiritual organization's culture, which can actually form a positivity in the company. Now let's get into this module. In this module, I'll be discussing about what organization culture is, how the culture is formed, how can we sustain the culture that is formed in the company, and you have different types of organization cultures which companies try to follow. Now to begin with, you can see there are certain directions for the footsteps. I think most of the malls have this, isn't it? And then you can see a specific place is made for every tool or the material that is there in the garage, or it could be in the shop floors. The same example again. You can see the designated place, the color coding, yeah, the systematic way of arranging things. And these, I think most of the malls could have the supply chain, what we call the storage part. It has certain color codes, and some codes are written, and you can also see the the marking. It has to be in that particular place. It should not cross the designated area. Okay, now you, this is again an example. You can just have a look at it. And of course you can see the table and the chair placed. Of course the table and the chair have certain coding, and the coding has to come exactly opposite to that. Now what are these? Now can we call this as a culture? Having a designated plates, the color coding, the systematic way of arranging the things, giving a specific place for any material that is there in the store. So can we call this as a culture? Now let's get into it. You can see there was there are two images. One is the before image and the after image. You can see the before image, everything was you can say jumbled up, a lot many things on the table. But once we apply a culture called as 5S at the workplace, there is a drastic change in how the office station looks like. Now what is this 5S? Okay, let's understand that with few more images. You can see before 5S, everything was just kept wherever it wanted to be. Nothing was disposed. No place was there. No coding was done. But once you apply this 5S, you can see there a lot of spacing there available to you. Designated place, color codes, proper application of the layout that you have, isn't it? Now you can see one more way of implementing 5S as a culture. You can see the designated area again. Yeah, it should not cross the marking there. Right, now let us try to understand what this 5S means about. Now to begin with, I'll just explain it in a simple statements. You can see the slide over there. It all starts with sorting. The first image you can see sorting what is required, what is not required. Okay, the one what is not required, we usually dump it out. Yeah, the one which is required, second stage, what we actually do is we start giving a perfect place for the materials that are there. Okay, designated area, as I'm repeating the word. And then once the designated area is given to the material, we actually get into cleaning, or we usually call it as shining. In the sense, we clean up the workstation or the workplace, and then finally we get into checklist method. Checklist is all about trying to understand whether the sorting was done, whether the, what you can say, spacing was actually done, then standardization was done, whether the shining was done. So all the checklist is to be maintained. Now this is called as 5S. To start with 5S, 5S again is, it all starts with sorting out the wanted and unwanted things. What is essential, not essential, is the sorting part. So once the sorting is done, we get into straightening. Straightening is all about, arranging the tools, yeah, and materials and the suppliers, so that they are kept in the area that is given to them. And then we get into shining. Shining is, as I said, systematic cleaning to make the workplace or the workspace look clean and as neat as possible. So at the end of the workday or my shift, once I'm going back, to my home, I want the workplace to appear as it was the day I entered my organization. And the last process you can see here, it's again called as standardization. Like, you are supposed to set a checklist whether things are done on time or not. And then finally, sustaining, what we call in the middle, you can say sustaining is all about maintaining and reviewing the standards, or the rigorous reviews, or the inspections that you did, the monitoring that you did. Yeah, so all that has to be consistently maintained and reviewed. Now that is considered as 5S. Now to understand it better with images, the first one is called as sorting. As we said, we call it as Siri. Is nothing but keep what is essential. So for further use, unwanted thing has to be unwanted thing has to be dispatched, the wanted ones has to be sorted out. Okay, now that's again the sorting. The next one you can see, it is called as sit on. Sit on is set it into order. In the sense, we have to arrange, we have to give a place for everything. You can see your different nuts and bolts have a different space, even the coding is done, isn't it? So that is again the second thing that we do in 5S. The third one, as I said, shining. You want the workspace to look clean and neat, so that actually enhances the way the employee performs in an organization. And then you get into standardization. As we did now, standardization is called as shiketsu. So once standardization is done, you call it as reviewing or maintaining the inspection that was done. So we call it as shitsuke. So shitsuke is nothing but sustaining whatever we have done. Now, to understand whether 5S is a culture, we will have to really break our head. Now, is 5S, yeah, 5S is a culture. Now, one best example for 5S is, you have Toyota going for this, you have L&T, you have Royal Enfield, you have Hyundai. So most of the companies are doing this 5S. Now the question comes, can 5S be a culture? And the answer is yes, 5S is a culture. Now when we do this 5S, it's not just about keeping the workspace clean, it's all about maintaining the quality. We are improvising the performance, we are bringing in that effectiveness. Now to understand this better, I will just take you all to a video on 5S culture, which is developed, or you can say initiated and very well practiced by Toyota production system.
Toyota, a name associated with quality products, is considered by many to be process whenever a potential fault is detected, so a solution can be found immediately. This means that any problem is made visible on the factory floor and is displayed on the and-on boards as soon as it is detected during the manufacturing process. Should a problem occur, Toyota team members are always encouraged to examine its origins and to practice Genchi Genbutsu, which means going to the source, finding the root of the problem and solving it to ensure production quality. Standardization of the manufacturing process is intrinsic to the Toyota production system's success. Developing and relying on standardized work tasks streamlines the production process and ensures consistently high levels of quality. Overall, Jidoka enables Toyota to provide customers with reliable, durable, high-quality products that offer customers better productivity for their businesses and, in consequence, provide a greater return on their investment. One of the foundations of the Toyota production system is Kaizen. This means continuous improvement. Fundamental to the Toyota production process, Kaizen can be considered as both a process as well as a philosophy. At regular scheduled meetings, team members are invited to give their opinions and share their suggestions for any improvements. Inevitably, these meetings encourage and create teamwork. In a typical year in our European factories, more than 3,000 proposals for improvements are suggested and considered. Perhaps this is why the Toyota production system has also been named the Thinking People System, as it relies on total commitment from everyone involved. TPS is present in every aspect of work and builds respect. All team members are requested to play an active role in keeping work environments clean by employing the 5 S's: sifting, sorting, sweeping, spick and span, and sustain. Clean and tidy work environments benefit the entire production process. Regarding the global environment, TPS is more than willing to adhere to government standards. As the environment concerns both Toyota and our customers, our 3 European factories are all ISO 14001 certified and are fitted with the latest technologies to manufacture products that have the minimum impact upon the environment. Within the Toyota production system, safety is also of paramount importance. Most of Toyota's manufacturing sites are certified or striving for OSAS 18001 certification, so that all team members work within respected standards in a safe and healthy environment. TPS creates a safe and responsible system, producing innovative, safer products that benefit the customers and their drivers. Safer products lead to improved productivity, which creates lower overall costs for the customer. TPS, a unique production system that enables Toyota to face all challenges and manufacture products of the highest quality, products that are cost efficient and whose delivery will be on time. TPS respects the environment and adheres to the highest safety standards. TPS, the Toyota production system, a proven world-class system benefiting Toyota's products, our customers, and our team members. Toyota Material Handling. Stronger together.
So that's how we say, yes, 5S is a culture. You can see TPS, you can see Kaizen, and you can see so many things that Toyota does in order to bring in that quality. So we consider this also as the culture. Well, having the right kind of attitude in an organization is also considered as a culture. If you can see this, wherein Vinit Nair of HCL always said employees first and the customer next. Now this can also be an example for the type of organization culture. Having the right attitude for women at work, or motivating women to work in the organization, having work-life balances and daycare facilities. So all those facilities which are motivating and women to come back to the work is again a culture. And of course, if you have kinds like, these could be the benefits, and that I can give to my employee and say my employees are completely engaged. So having employee engagement in an organization through a respectful treatment, trust between the people, I can give overall benefits to my employees. I maintain a very good relationship with my employees, a lot of job security, and a better pay and compensation for whatever they do can also be considered as the culture. The one most important thing, having citizens, the committed employees, the loyal employees, the employees who are always there with the organization, whether the company is into ups or downs, speaks positive about the organization outside, can also be considered as one of the culture. Yeah, we call it as organization committed. So having committed employees is not an easy task, and if you're able to do it, then you have maintained a better culture in the company. And then you can see here an example of Infosys, which has women inclusive network. You have specially abled people, and then you see that a lot of family oriented activities, and of course having gay and the lesbians in the company can also be called as a type of culture that we are trying to bring in. And of course, asking people to work in a group, having this team building, can also be a culture, isn't it? And if my company is providing me various ways to learn and unlearn myself, I think that's the best culture that the company has. Having people coming from different countries, different nations, different castes, different creed, different personalities will obviously count to the organization culture. If my organization has the best of the best conflict resolution techniques, then I can say yes, it has a culture. And of course, Google, as we always all the time speak about motivational practices, the facility that Google has, so is the best example for having a better organization culture that can motivate an employee to stay as a citizen. Now at the end of this session, I'll again speak on Google having a better organization culture. One most important thing is our value system. If the company has a better value system, as we spoke about, Enron spoke about Satyam for not having a better value system. On the contrary, we spoke about Johnson, we spoke about Cadbury's, isn't it? Tata's, Wipros having, Infosys having a better value system. Now, these value systems in the organization also constitute organization culture. Now let's come back to the word organization culture. Organization culture, as the slide you can see, it refers to a system of a shared meaning that are held by the members that distinguishes an organization from the others. Now whenever I speak about culture, I try to see whether my employees are encouraged to be innovative, whether my employees are asked to take certain risks, yeah, whether I as a management, do I focus on results or do I focus on the process? So what are my outcome orientation? How do I treat my people? What decisions I take when it comes to people management? Yeah, so somewhere as a company, how much aggressive are my people? And if my people are aggressive, will I reward them, recognize them? Is the organization competitive, or is it just easy going? So whenever we speak about these words, we say it's all about organization culture. Now I'll speak to all of you in a simple terms what organization culture can also be. Now if I go back to whatever we discussed till now, we started with 5 years. We started with total production system. We started with Kaizen, Kanban, and so many things. Yeah, so that can also be a culture. On the other side, we spoke about attitude, we spoke about personality, we spoke about values. Those also are culture. Now let me speak a simple terms like there is an organization A, and this organization is a manufacturing firm. Now in this company, managers are expected to document everything, and all the reports have to be detailed in the reporting thing. Creativity not encouraged. People are criticized and penalized openly. More of individual works we prefer in organization A, and we always have extensive rules and regulations in this firm. And now what employees are supposed to do is they're just supposed to follow whatever is there in the organization. So anything new that you want to bring in is not acceptable. Now you can see organization B. The organization B is also a manufacturing firm. Now here you see management is encouraging what? Rewards for creativity, for taking risks. Now decisions are based on intuitions and they are valued. You can take your own decisions. Now whatever you might fail, but the failure is considered as a learning experience. Here we are concentrating more on working in a team. People always speak positive. We are empowered, lot of freedom. Okay, very less rules and regulations for the employees to follow. Supervision is loose because we know that employees are qualified enough, competent enough. Employees are hardworking and somewhere they are trustworthy. So that is again culture B. Now these two are contradicting cultures. Now you can see the man here. Why is she trying to shake my hand? The lady over here, why is he bowing, right? So somewhere when we have differences of culture in the organization among the employees, this will actually lead into you call it as culture shock. So whenever this culture shock exists in the company, it is very difficult for an organization to be more effective in their processes. Now that's how we study the module organization culture, try to understand the different types of culture and how can we build a better culture, taking everybody together and trying to improve the organization's effectiveness. Now to proceed further, I have listed few examples of companies which speaks about their own culture, taken from their respective websites again. You can see one of the company AT&T, which says diverse workforce. Now they say they allow us to attract and retain the best and the brightest to develop the most innovative products and solutions to meet our customer. So somewhere workforce diversity is again the need of the hour and is referred as one of the type of organization culture. Sony Corporation again, they say diversity week, be your whole self. Employee participation, open communication is again a culture that exists at Sony. You have IBM again. In most of the modules you have spoken about this company because this company has so many things to be studied when it comes to organization behavior, right from embracing the workforce diversity to inclusion to what else you want. Yeah, so somewhere IBM as the best organization culture. Now keeping this as a base, let's little bit get into a theory part wherein we try to classify the culture into dominant culture and the subculture. So when I speak about dominant culture, it's all about the culture that expresses the core values that are shared by majority of the members in the organization. So my core values, what are core values? Core values are the primary or the dominant values that are accepted by most of their employees in the organization. Now core values could be openness, honest, respect, teamwork. Yeah, so if I have these trust among people, so somewhere these could be called as the core values. Now core values are again considered as the dominant values. Now the next type of value you can see there, it's called as subculture values. Subculture values are the mini cultures within an organization. Now typically these are defined by the departments, designations or the geographical separation. Now department says a different type of culture. Now that is again the subculture. So when we have the dominant culture and subculture in the organization, this will constitutes to strong culture. Now what is the strong culture? A culture in which the core values are intensely held and widely shared. Yeah, now that is again the strong culture that we organizations speak about. Now when you speak about organization culture, we are supposed to create and maintain, or you can say sustain, that organization culture. So how do we create or how do we sustain? The first thing is you have to speak on or understand here is how the culture begins. So how you want to begin a culture. Second thing is how to keep the culture alive. So once that is done, the third thing that you'll have to do here is you'll have to understand how do I sustain it. Okay, three things how a culture begins, second thing how to keep the culture alive, and the third thing is how to sustain or maintain that consistency in developing the culture. Now here I've taken an example of Mindtree. You can see the building over there, infrastructure. Mindtree says welcome to possible, something interesting, isn't it? Now what happens here in Mindtree is, at Mindtree the employees are referred as, you know uh, they're sorry, they're not referred as people, but they're referred as minds. The 10 founders of Mindtree built the company on the values of openness, transparency, trust, communication, questioning, teamwork. Now, one of the main person of Mindtree, he wrote in one of the blog, he says, knowledge initiatives are among those with the highest percentage of failure in the organization. Okay, so knowledge initiatives are among those who with the highest percentage of failures. It was emphasized that to succeed processes technology, minds needs to focus both on creation and sharing of knowledge. So the culture of sharing knowledge is very important, and that is what is embraced and appreciated at the company called as Mindtree. So here Mindtree concentrates on the leaders, the 10 people who started this Mindtree, their culture, and this culture has floated down to all the employees. So one important thing what they concentrate is create and share the knowledge. Now let's look at a small video which speaks about how Mindtree introduced a new culture by getting into a program called as PACE. So that was again a PACE program which was done by Mindtree in order to bring in that new culture in the company. That's how the organizations usually do train the employees in acquiring the culture. So we are discussing on topic called as creating and sustaining culture. So this was just an example like how Mindtree has a culture and how it proceeds further. Now the first thing that we have to discuss, as I said, how a culture begins. An organization's culture or the customs, the traditions, the general way of doing things are largely is done because they have been doing it and they have been successful in that. Now the first thing what happens here is the founders hire and keep only those employees whom they think and feel the same way they do. So first thing is your selections or the hiring process that we have in the company. The second thing is you're supposed to indoctrinate and socialize these employees to their way of thinking and feeling. So third thing that the founders or the organizations people do is they try to encourage employees and identify them and try to internalize the beliefs, the values, the assumptions that are there in the organization. Now the first thing you can see there on my slide, so it all starts with the founders of the organization, their visions, their value system. So they will have to indoctrinate those value system and make the employees feel socialized in the way that they think. Now founders own behavior plays a very important role here. You have one best example, Hyundai is an example. A Korean conglomerate again has the same characteristics which are often used to describe the founder of Hyundai again, Achung. Now his value system, his vision, his own thinking has flowed down to the entire organization called as Hyundai. Like this, we have so many examples like again Bill Gates at Microsoft, Narayan Murthy at Infosys again, Premji from Wipro, Vijay Mallya at VB Group, UB Groups again, now Richard Branson for the Virgin Groups. Now somewhere these organizations have that culture all because of their founders, because the founders were very strong with their value system, the personality, the way they could look at the organization. Now, for example, do you think why I've pasted Modi ji's thing here? Yeah, somewhere I feel that the culture of digital India, make in India, isn't it? So somewhere bringing that responsibility on the shoulders of the employees is all started by the leader. It all starts with the founder. Now if he is able to make sense to the people, then obviously we can build the cultures. The first thing is how do we begin or how the culture begins. So it all begins with the founder, the visionary. And the second thing you have to understand here is we have to keep the culture alive. Yes, of course, Digital India, Make in India was very well done by this man, but how are we citizens going to keep this culture alive? So it all depends on once your culture is in place or in practice, the most important thing is you will have to maintain it. You will have to give the similar experiences to your employees whenever you proceed. So the first thing that we usually do is maybe your selection process or your appraisal evaluations or the training practices you do, developmental activities that you do in the company, the promotion processes that you follow. So every activity should follow your culture. You should reward the people who are supporting your culture. You should also penalize the people who are not following the culture that you have drafted in the organization culture format, what we call. So somewhere what plays very important role here is rewarding, or you can say the recognition of the people who are keeping the culture alive. And the second thing is selection. As you see there, I've just sorted an example there. You can see it's an example of a company called as Azoba. Azoba means meaning is miracles. Now this is a company, it's a provider of revenue cycle outsourcing services to the healthcare systems. Of course it is located in North Carolina, but one of its operational centers are in Chennai, that is in India. Now Azoba has opened up, it has a very good culture, open culture, and wishes to perform miracles by taking care of the employees. When this man Tony was asked, how are you keeping your culture alive, the first thing that he said was, yes, our selection process is very strong. We want to see the knowledge, skill, abilities, of course, but what matters to us is their value system. And of course he also says that the culture of the company is very open. Now it has over 1700 employees and is being rated as the top 10 employee friendly companies in India. Now if we ask why, or if we understand why is it called as the top friendly companies in India? Now the answer is here: the expectations of people that it recruits and openly explains to them the pluses and minuses of joining the company is very well dealt. Now if you look at the night shifts here, night shift starts from 6 p.m. and it ends by 2:30 a.m., so that the biological clock of the employees is not disturbed, is what the main person says. Now they also have a 24 hours call on doctors, and the entire HR staff is trained in such a way that they can counsel anybody. Counseling skills are very much developed for the HR team, so that the employees are always kept motivated and engaged. Now once the employee joins this company, there is no legal contract, but they say they have a gentleman's agreement. They say you have to work for the company for 2 years, and employees, you believe it or not, in one of the articles they say they would love to work with the company because they have such, friendly policies. Now how could anybody keep the culture alive? So the first thing is the selection process. Okay, so you should have the best of the best selection processes and maintaining the practices, the policies that you have. So once you recruit them, how do you maintain the culture, or how do you give the treatment to them? That plays a very important role. And the third important thing here is the top management. So if you want to keep the culture alive, one is your selection process, that should be very strong. And the second thing is the top people plays a very important role, because we always see, we always observe a leader and we try to implement it. So action of top people plays a very important role. Now you can see there Vinith Nair from HCL, who always said employees first, customer next. Everybody was shocked, including the employees, the outsiders, the competitors. But yes, Vinith Nair was able to make it for HCL, and he said, I will do this and I will make people to follow it. Now if you look at the culture of HCL again, it's one of the leading global IT service company. Now we usually link the culture with the culture of then the CEO Vinith Nair. Now this man concentrates on something called a smart service desk. Now this is the desk for employee redressal, and it is very hassle free. Anytime the employees can log in. Now you believe it or not, they have 24,000 reviews, performance reviews, to be completed in 30 days. Now that is really, shocking. Strategic meetings are also done at the boardrooms, and this is usually done annually, and it is called as directions. Now the CEO himself tries to respond to the employees question. They have a forum called as you and I, where the employees can directly go and talk to Vinith Nair and air their issues. So somewhere Vinith Nair is there for the employees to give that feel. Now in order to help the employees in various domain, what HCL does is they have career planning initiatives for 24/7 counseling program. Now this counseling program is called as Mitra at HCL, and for all the HCLites and their families, they have a app called as Genie, wherein they can book the movie tickets, find the right gifts for their loved ones. There are also something called as Fundus for the Fridays. So somewhere this has led to visible results in better services and lower attrition rate, and makes HCL as the great place to work. So somewhere the actions that the top people take, the initiation that this man did, so that kept the culture alive. And the third important thing here is socializing. You should allow your employees to socialize. Now what is the socialization process? This process helps the employee, what you can say, helps the new employee to adapt to the prevailing culture. So what happens here is, one just example you can see here, this is the socializing process. Pre-arrival, that is before you enter the organization, there are some programs done so that you get acquainted to the organization culture. Encounter is you actually get into the job, and then comes the metamorphosis, in the sense you get in touch with the performances, your job, and of course the outcome. So if your pre-arrival is properly done when it comes to organization culture, like you can see the image there, it's a boot camp. Now let me give an example for officers who join this Indian military academy. Now what happens here is they usually undergo a boot camp. Now this boot camp, it proves the commitment that they are supposed to do. At the same time, what happens here is the officer trainers indoctrinate new recruits how the army officers way, they call it as army officers way. So the trainees have to undergo this program for around 60 days, and somehow they will have to prove that they are the uh, army officers, and that's how the socializing process has to be done. Now this is again the way how we can keep the culture alive. So as I said, I go back to this, how do we create and sustain the culture? It all starts with should understand how the culture begins, and then you should keep the culture alive by the way of your practices, and as a top also get into socialize, allowing the employees to socialize. Now let me speak about L&T again. It's organization culture. Now L&T has a CSR committee which is trying to reduce the malnutrition in and around the city since 2006. Now this CSR, the corporate social responsibility, is also considered as the culture. Now it has worked with 137 child development services, yeah, designed information, education and communication material for the mothers. So somewhere they are concentrating more on developing these kids or the child across the places. Now they do have regular health checkup for the kids. They also have certain tie-ups with the NGO. Now this can also be called as the culture. Now the question comes, we have spoken about culture, maintaining, top management, socializing. Now from how I should understand what my organization culture is, isn't it? So to understand that, you have a few things. The first one, you can see there, the stories. Usually when you join an organization, in the induction program they narrate the story, how the company started, what was the role of a CEO, or how what actually made them to start. Like when we speak about Tatas again, Jamshedji Tata has a own story, isn't it? So somebody didn't allow him in the restaurant where the board was written, it's not allowed for the dogs and Indians. So somewhere he started Taj Hotel, isn't it? Now similarly Wipro also has some stories. So usually employees learn the culture by listening to the stories that are usually narrated by their immediate bosses, or it could happen in usual interactions or in the induction program. The second thing that we learn about organization culture is our material symbols, in the sense the office structure. Now you can see here Tatas again, the office structure appears like this, with Pro it appears this way. So somewhere the office structure also tells me what type of organization culture is. Google, you have seen the office structure, so highly informal. Now here it is highly formalized and systematic, and things like that. And the third important thing that tells us about the organization culture is your languages that the company uses. So could be Bold, Katia, Pops, SLOs, different softwares, or the softwares that the company uses also tells us about their culture. Now one most important thing are the rituals. Now I sorted an example of Ambuja Cement. So whenever they start the meeting, they sing a song collectively saying that Humko Man Ki Shakti Dena. So they want all that energy, the blessings to start up any meeting or their work in the organization. Similarly, I am Ahmedabad. The students, what they do is at the night they start chanting, they start shouting, they just want to say that yes, we are not sleeping, we are studying together, we are doing it. Now that's how we can keep the culture alive. So employees learn the culture, one, by the stories, second, the material symbol, the infrastructure, third one, the languages, so the softwares that's used, and the fifth one is the rituals. Now let me quickly go through certain organization cultures that exist in the company. The first type of culture, it is called as baseball culture. Best example for baseball culture is the IT industry, software in companies, computer softwares, or investment banks. Now if you look at IT industry or baseball team culture, they always support innovation, and risk taking is very high. Now here the employees are given the rewards, financial rewards are very strong, and of course with financial rewards there should be some risk. Of course risk is very high, long term security is also there, is like you can say whenever there is a risk, so I cannot expect any security there. So long term security is not existing, but job hopping is very common because people would like to quit the organization and look for the better company which can give them the better thing. So we speak about baseball culture. One, they support, they want innovations, risk taking, and financial rewards are very strong. As I said, security is not at all there, but job hopping is very common. The second type of culture you can see here, it's called as club culture. The best example for club culture is your government offices and the military offices. The government offices, when I say, we always support what? Seniority. The rewards are based on the seniority, and security as such is very high. Of course they reward what, loyalty, commitment, number of years you have spent. So employees in this culture, what happens is they start their career at a very lesser age, small age, like 15 for 16 20 years, and then they end up with the same firm working for 40 years. So a lot of commitment, you can see job satisfaction, traditional systems, that type of culture you observe in the club culture. Academic culture, the best example is IBM, PNG, Coca-Cola. So what happens with respect to IBM or the listed companies here is they focus more on training the employees. So what they do is whenever they recruit people, they usually put them on training for the next 2 3 months. They say because they want them to be functional expertise, then only they'll be able to put them on the job. So somewhere a lot of training and development practices are done in this academy culture. Now steady climbers who enjoy mastering the jobs are is better for the academic culture, because the growth is slow, because you are trained and then you're put on the task and you're assessed. So somewhere it's a very slow process, but again lot of training and development activities are done at the academy culture. So most of the recruitments happen from the campus recruitments or the institutions, what we call. Now the uh, thing here is how do we build the strong culture. Now as I said, strong culture is all about having those core values and all the members accepting and indoctrinating the core values that are listed by the organization. Now if I want to do that, the best thing here is you will have to have the most of the flexible plans, employee friendly plans. So when you have these employee friendly plans, when you have a better leader who can give you certain directions, certain pathway, that will actually help you to maintain that culture. Now best example is of Google again, which says of having they say you have to reduce the political environment in the company, and the second thing that they say is you will have to reduce the conflict, somewhere have those conflict management techniques. So you should have a better networking or social relationship, so that you can make them the community member or member in sports, things like that. Club memberships you can give, and high standards of excellence you can expect, participative management you can use. So somewhere Google is successfully trying to build the strong culture. So it all depends on the leader, it all depends on the practices or the policies that the company has. It also depends on how do we sustain the developed culture. So guys, this is all about organization culture. If you see what all we have started, we started with 5 years being organization culture. Toyota as an example for Kaizen, Kanban, you know uh, we called Kaizen, Kanban, all this, and as the organization culture. And then we spoke about having the right attitude, work life balance, motivating women in the work, yeah, so having the right type of personalities. So all this also, uh, conceptualizes to organization culture. And then we spoke about the definition of culture, the types of culture, dominant and of course the subculture. And then if I want to keep that sustaining culture in my organization, what should we do? So the processes were discussed, and some examples of different companies which have a different types of culture is also discussed. This is all about organization culture. Thank you for listening to me out.